They don't talk, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a problem. I would like to introduce
Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations Team.
Hello, welcome to another night of Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Radio. Tonight we will be talking to James Robinson, who is an author, publisher, and storyteller, and an expert on lake and river monsters. And he should be calling in within a few minutes, but we're going to start off with a couple of news articles, and I'll pass it off to Tim in order to read the news.
All right, guys, so I'm going to hurry this up, but this one really caught my attention. This is as of April 29th, 2010. Russian hunter claims he has saved Bigfoot from drowning in Siberia. It gets better, guys. It says a Russian hunter named Afanisai Kiskorovov, together with several other hunters, claim they've saved something that is only out of this world and can be described only as Bigfoot from a frozen river in central Siberia. It says Russian news agency Itar TASS quoted a source from the administration of the Tashago district from the Perm region as saying the incident took place April 29th this year near the village of Sanaziaziak Kiachi. The village is located 140 kilometers away from the nearest human settlement, with only connection with its residents is by helicopter. The latest flight to the village brought back a written report of the encounter with Bigfoot. It says, the letter read, Afanisai Kiskorakov, together with the other hunters, were fishing when they heard a huge loud cracking noise of ice, along with a huge big howl. They immediately approached the source of the noise, and the hunters saw an unusual creature, only described as a huge man covered in dark brown fur. The creature was in the river, panicking about 10 meters from the bank as it unsuccessfully tried to get out of the water and stand upright. So the Kiskorakov rushed to the rescue and reached to the creature with a dry tree branch. Then Bigfoot, in quotations, then grabbed the branch onto the shore and got onto the shore and quickly ran away. And it says, authorities in the Kemerovo region have repeatedly released stories of Bigfoot sightings the past year. According to them, they believe that the cryptozoology could help develop tourism in Siberia. So what do you guys think about that article?
It's pretty interesting. I mean, I guess cryptozoology could develop a tourism industry. You could get some people out there looking for things like the wild man of Siberia and such. Yeah, you get people like us out there. Well, it'd be going to New Guinea.
Exactly. That's a huge tourist area, like New Guinea.
Oh, yeah. So you can die of disease, headhunters.
Want me to read this?
I'll go ahead.
Well, it's 7:05 right now, and James should be calling in any second. But I was going to say we can elaborate a little bit on the article you just read if you want. Well, this one I'll summarize real quick. It says, summarized UFO witnessed in Richmond, Virginia. It says a lady was walking when she spotted a UFO that was the size of a football field and didn't have any kind of rudders or anything on it. And she said it was only flying 1,000 feet above the street. But what's most interesting about it, she said it blinked twice in like a super bright light that blinded her. It was gone, like 2 seconds later. So that's the entire story, summarized. That's weird. That is weird. Oh, yeah. See, I told you that story. So basically this UFO or whatever it was blinded this woman when it flew by? Is that what happened? No, it was sitting in the sky while she was exercising, and it flashed once, twice, and the third time it was so bright it hurt her eyes, and she said it was like looking into the 10 suns. So when she could recover her eyes, she looked up and it was gone. So, well, right now I think, James, is that you on the line?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hey, James, this is Jeremy from BFP Radio. On the phone with me right now, I have my two team members, Nick and Tim. Hello.
Hello, yeah, how you doing?
Good, how are you two doing?
Doing well.
Good.
Thank you.
And we're going to get started on tonight's topic for those of you listening. And I'll have Nick give an introduction for Mr. Robinson.
All right, yes, this is Mr. James Foster Robinson. Like I stated briefly earlier, he's an author, publisher, and storyteller, and he has written a very good book, the Encyclopedia of Lake and River Monsters, and he is a expert on Canadian lake and river monsters specifically, and we're very glad to have him tonight on our show.
Hi, how you doing? Just call me Jim.
Oh, okay.
Just call you Jim?
Okay, Jim.
So, Jim, I would just like to start off the show like we usually do. We usually have each one of our guests say their background and what got them started in whatever field of research that they're in. I was going to see, could you talk a little bit about what got you involved with lake monsters and paranormal and storytelling?
Certainly. Well, as a child, I grew up listening to stories from my uncles and aunts about ghosts and monsters and all this sort of thing, because back then we didn't have the internet and just the radio, no TV. And as I grew up, I encountered several little situations that, in fact, I grew up in a haunted house, had 3 ghosts there, and saw a number of unusual animals in the water that perked my interest over the years. So I started collecting data, information on all these things, and put them together. Recently, I just put it together in the Encyclopedia of Lake and River Monsters to give people the idea or a look at the many different bodies of fresh water in the world that have had or still have some sort of unusual creatures in it that science just doesn't seem to be able to explain. One I saw myself, I mentioned in the introduction, was possibly what they call Ogopogo in Lake Okanagan in British Columbia. As I mentioned in the introduction there, I looked back as we crossed this bridge that spanned a narrow spot of the lake, and I saw what looked like a log come to the surface, a long 30-foot log, except the head of the log sort of undulated and then dove back into the water. So if that was a log, it was a very flexible log. I personally think it was Ogopogo, the famous Canadian monster up there in British Columbia.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah,
Just
is
before
really...
we start the show, I was wondering, how many strange, so do you do only lake monsters, or do you do river monsters and lake monsters both, like about the same?
Well, actually, I do lake monsters, river monsters, ocean monsters, but in the book it's lake and river monsters. I eventually hope to do an encyclopedia of ocean monsters because there's hundreds of sightings. When I lived in British Columbia for 15 years, though I never saw it, there were supposed to be a number of lake monsters along the shores of British Columbia, the most famous which was Caddy or Catabosaurus, I think that's how they call it. And that was supposed to have been seen right off the provincial capital of Victoria on the south end of Vancouver Island. And there seems to be a whole family of them living in that area.
Are they still seen there today, like modern sightings?
Yes, they're still seeing Ogopogo in Lake Okanagan, and occasionally there's sightings come up about the various large monsters seen off of British Columbia coast, and I believe off of Seattle and the Olympic Mountains there in Washington.
Well, one question that we're getting right now is people are asking us, out of the lake monsters and river monsters that your research, did you only have that one initial sighting with what you thought was Ogopogo, or have you seen multiple monsters?
I've seen only one of Ogopogo. I've seen disturbances in the water, but I rely mainly on other people's reports, because I believe people are seeing something out there, and it can't be like they're just all seeing just floating logs or something like that. There are creatures being seen by various people of high repute, police officers, ferry boat pilots, and that sort of thing. So they're still coming in from various places, but of course they die out in one place and show up in another place as maybe they're migrating or they grow old and pass away.
Well, something else that I would like to get to. What do you personally think that these creatures are? Like, would you say that they're like some sort of ancient dinosaur, or would you say that they're like just a creature that evolved with evolution, or?
Some of them, from the description, sound like they're giant eels. The Saragossa Sea out in the ocean, they've found larvae, which is the small baby form of eels, up to 9 feet long. And they have speculated that they can grow up to 100 feet long as adults. So it is possible that these eels migrate up through the rivers into Canada, United States, Europe, all over, and are possibly some of the sightings that are seen. Others appear to be some sort of prehistoric, giant underwater creature that we still find now and then. For instance, they never believed about the giant squids off of Newfoundland until a few years ago when they found them up to 80 to 100 feet across.
Yeah, I recall that.
Yeah. So there's
one. Oh, you go ahead.
Yes. So there are many different possibilities as to what they are. It is thought that Loch Ness Monster is a creature that somehow comes to an underground cavern from the ocean and comes up in the lake, the Loch Ness there. Others are totally unexplainable. For instance, like in Ireland, there's these small, very small lakes that traditionally have a monster, and people have said they've seen it even when they were sober. As you know, the Irish like to tell tall tales. I'm of Irish.
Yeah.
But there have been too many credible sightings of them. These small, and these lakes are apparently quite deep in places, and they may have underground connections with the sea.
Wow.
So with one question that's being asked to us right now is, in regards to the lakes and rivers that these creatures live in, is there any coincidences like depth or any sort of fish life or anything like that are in common with all these places?
Well, that's pretty hard to say unless you do a complete analysis of the environments that these creatures supposedly live in. Over the years, there have been a number of hoaxes perpetrated by various people for various reasons, so it's hard to determine. Maybe some of the ones that we think are real today might be hoaxes that have not been uncovered. So you'd have to take a look at each case and try to figure out what the environment's like. But a lot of the ones that I think are authentic have some connection with the ocean, whether by river or possible underground tunnels.
So do a lot of these creatures go back and forth between the ocean and these rivers and lakes?
That is a good possibility that a number of them do. They migrate, like the eel type. Perhaps is a result of migration from the ocean and back again. Others, it's hard to say. I myself have seen large water snakes over 16 feet long in Ontario when I was a boy, canoeing out on a lake. And it came over the bow of the canoe, a 16-foot canoe, and it was still coming out of the water as its head went into the water at the back of the canoe. And that's like 16-foot water snake. That's a huge snake to encounter.
Yeah.
There are creatures that, even like snapping turtles. I know of a place in Ontario, too, where the snapping turtles are huge. And, of course, you get stories all the time about giant turtles here and there being found.
Well, a weird question that we're asking us right now is, I know people commonly, when they sight these creatures, they see humps or humps in the water. Are these the giant eels that you were talking about, like that general, that type of sighting?
From what I've been able to do in my research, reading and collecting data and this sort of thing, the humps is something slightly different. An eel would be undulating the opposite way, so it wouldn't hump up and down, from what I understand. This could be some other prehistoric creature that has survived and has come up into the lake or has survived in the lake. Like Lake Okanagan is deep, and this is the type of creature that has been seen there called Ogopogo, and it's actually supposed to be a family. It's been seen with a couple of young also over the years. So it could be that the humps, if they're not a natural disturbance, like sometimes ducks will go in a row in the water, or schools of, I've seen carp in the St. Lawrence River that grow up to 3-4 feet. And they get in a line, it almost looks like humps when they come to the surface, but you have to be very careful when you make a sighting like that and say it's a lake monster when it could be just giant fish. But the other one, hump, the Ogopogo, seems to be more authentic. They've actually seen a head, they've actually seen other little humps beside it. So there's a lot of sightings of Ogopogo in Canada.
Didn't you go get some sort of recent news article on Champ for the Ogopogo not too long ago, Nick?
I've seen some of the articles on Champ in Lake Champlain in New York, but there's a bit of a story about that. Champ itself is only a new addition to that lake. Years ago when I was researching it, everybody says the explorer Samuel de Champlain saw Champ in Lake Champlain, which is named after him. That's not correct. I read his original diary, or whatever you call it there, that he kept a log of the trip in French and English, and he only speaks about seeing 16-foot long gar pike in Lake Champlain. These are a type of fish. They grow quite big. They have a long snout with teeth out on the side. He mentions further on about hearing stories from an Indian chief up off the Ottawa River about a lake monster in a lake now called Muskrat Lake. In the 60s, as I followed the trend of stories about it, those two were separated. Then one author tied them together, said Champlain saw Champ in Lake Champlain. And after that, we suddenly have a lot of Champlain sightings, Champ sightings. Now, I believe some of them are authentic, but others might be, they see a ripple in the water, and wind can do that, ripple it against the current, or the current can run a ripple against the wind. So it's hard to say. Some of them look pretty authentic. Even the pictures they have look pretty authentic, that there is now some creature in Lake Champlain.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the pictures you're talking about. That does look really, really authentic to me, though, that one.
Mm-hmm. That lake is connected, I believe, to the St. Lawrence River, and the rivers connect to Lake Ontario and up to another series of lakes, to Lake Erie, and, of course, Niagara Falls. The Great Lakes, when the Europeans first came to the area, recorded tales of a lot of huge snakes, both on land and in the water, that they were so common. I have collections in my thing there. Lake Ontario, they had like 30, 40, 60-foot long snakes in the water attacking ships back in the 1700s and 1800s. So it's possible that, course, this is all connected to the sea in some way. So there could be these giant eels coming up through.
Well, a question that I was wondering was, how early do the reports of some of these creatures go?
For Lake Champlain or the...
Well, I was just saying that just in general, like most lake monsters in general.
Okay, the ones, they go back thousands of years. In the Encyclopedia, there's actually, I've included a lot of legends and lakes that are supposed to have been over in Europe that was said to have monsters in them. There was one outside of Paris in the Middle Ages that used to eat people in the river that flows to Paris, France. Here in North America, the Indians have legends about giant snakes and creatures. In fact, on the north shore of Lake Ontario at Rice Lake, there's a mound called Serpent's Mound. And the legend is that the Indians, the natives, fought pitched battles against these huge snakes that came from the south up to Lake Ontario back hundreds of years before the Europeans came to that area.
Oh yeah, I never heard. That's neat.
So I know a lot of these creatures, or at least a couple of them. I know I've read different reading material where it says that they have ancient, like Indian, like the Indians wrote cave paintings about these creatures and things like that. I was just wondering, do you know of any lake monsters in the western United States?
In the western United States? Yes, there are a number of them. There, I don't call right offhand because there's so many. But in my book there, you can go through it, and you'll see, I was looking at one just a little while ago here. In, I think it was out in Wisconsin, and then there was one in Washington. There's supposed to be a lake in Washington that it's not exactly a monster in it, but if you fall into it, nobody can find it now, but if you fall into it, you turn into a monster, according to the legends about the place. So if you go for a swim in there, you come out with fins and stuff like that.
Well, that's interesting. So what do you mean, like, could you elaborate a little bit on that? Like if you fall in here, like the legend says you turn into a monster?
Yes, it's apparently comes after you, sorry, that's another story. The lake itself is supposed to be so, I guess we'd call it toxic at this time, but the natives said that if you went into that lake, you would come out and turn into a monster. That's basically what the legend says. But again, there's no sightings of anybody going into that lake because nobody can find it right at the moment. It'd be interesting to look for it. Might even make a good movie.
Jim, I have a question about a recent Canadian lake monster named Cammy. Are you familiar with that name?
What's the name? Sorry.
Cammy, and a man named John Kirk, co-founder of the British Columbia Scientific Cryptozoology Club, says his organization has been cataloging sighting reports of an odd creature in Cameron Lake about 5 years ago. This was last year, a news article I'm reading from last year. So in about 2004, they started cataloging this.
Well, I've been, after I published this book, I've gone on to other books, ghosts, and things like that, but I'm trying to keep up on it. There's so much coming out now. I don't have that in my book, so that must be a recent thing in that Cameron Lake. And that, but I'll have to look that up. It would be a good thing to update my book when I start to update it again. Now, was that in British Columbia?
We have someone that... what were you saying? We have a question right now that's coming in. They're asking, how deep generally are the lakes that these creatures are in? Like the ones that are supposed to live in?
Okay, that, again, there's such a variety of monsters seen in different lakes. Some of them are quite shallow, but the majority seem to be like almost 300 to plus feet deep. So far that it gets pretty murky and dark down there that you can't see them.
Well, something that I was personally wondering was your website says that your book talks about human-like amphibians. Could you talk a little bit about those?
Yes, there was a lake in British Columbia where some people reported several times a creature came out. It was human-like, but it had gills, scales, and webbed feet. They're seen also here in the United States in various places, though I'm not too sure how correct they are, but because I had sort of an experience myself, but in a different way. A bunch of us were at a local beach, and there was a couple that we didn't know were down and parked further down the beach in a car. And a buddy of mine decided to put on a scuba outfit, and he went into the water. He came out of the water. He had one of those Black Lagoon masks on, and he came out of the water towards them, and they panicked and drove off there in a rush. And then within a half an hour, there was a whole truckload of guys with guns and baseball bats coming down to get the web creatures seen coming out of the river. We had to explain to them that it was just a joke. Then we had to share our beer with them.
That sounds interesting. Hey, well, another question that was coming in was, currently, do you know, is there more reports coming out of Canada or the United States?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, is there more sighting reports coming out of Canada or the United States?
Well, each report in itself is exciting because somebody is seeing something or reporting they're seeing something, and they come out of Canada, the United States, they're even coming like out of Vietnam. They recently found the giant turtle that was supposed to live in this lake outside of Saigon. A few years ago, they found that it was there. It's about 15 feet across. Just hadn't been seen in a while. So that in itself is exciting. You know, a huge turtle like that. When there's a report on Champ or on this Canby that you're speaking of there, it's exciting because it's showing there's something out there that people are seeing that we have not yet been able to explain. Critics can explain it away easily, but if you start looking at the real good reports, there's something there.
Well, go ahead, Tim.
Oh, no, I'm just saying I agree fully because there's definitely things that science and us don't know about yet.
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, that includes like not only just lake and river monsters and ocean monsters, but even the UFOs and ghost specters and the orbs that everyone has been seeing lately. There's something people are. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we had a question actually that was kind of strange, but it was because you brought up UFOs. I was going to ask you. We had a guest right now that's listening. They were wondering, is there any sort of a relation between lake monsters and UFOs? Like people were saying that sometimes Bigfoot sighted in high UFO active areas, and I guess the people wanted to know if there's any sort of a relation between UFOs and lake monsters.
I've read on that theory that there are windows scattered around the world that are more sensitive psychically, and phenomena is more likely to show it there. Near where I used to live in Ontario, in upstate New York on the St. Lawrence River, there's a river called Black River. And there's a lake monster supposed to be there, but you can only see it when lightning flashed during the lightning storm. And it was like an outline, and it would move, they said. In the reports that I had, they said that this creature would only be seen during the lightning storm. So might this be like the lightning create a window, as some of the people who put this theory forward? So yes, there might be a connection between UFOs. There might be no connection. It's really hard to say. Some sightings have no relationship to UFOs at all, whereas others, they also find Bigfoot sightings clustered around UFO sightings, around the same area, same time, at various intervals I've read.
So, something that I had written down here, do you know of any sort of attacks on people or anything that's tried to attack a boat?
Not the lake monsters that I know of. except the reports, some of the reports from Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, that these creatures came up quite close and maybe, but I don't know of anybody actually being killed or eaten by a lake monster or a river monster. Actually, lake and river monsters, I feel, are both the same thing. They just happen to, when they're in the river, they're a river monster. When they're in the lake, they're a lake monster. But I don't recall offhand of any really serious incidents, though there have been stories, the urban legend stories about people swimming in a lake and disappearing.
I know one of the only ones that's around our area, it's like a crocodilian creature. Are they most often the eels, eel-like creatures, or are they crocodilians or just strange-looking fish? Or like, what's most often like the most popular kind of creatures that are sighted?
Well, there's the crocodilian, as you call them. They're seen quite often. Eels, I think where there's more of an outlet to the sea are the giant eel types. And the sort of the old dinosaur types, water dinosaur types are seen. Actually, I think they center, if I remember correctly, there's a lot of that center in western United States and upper Canada. In Canada, it's a lot of the giant eels, except for Ogopogo and in the western area. But eastern, it's like this, the North Saskatchewan River that flows into Hudson Bay. There's been a giant eel seen in there. So, since these creatures are so big, I know it's a common question that always comes up, and I've been asked this question already since the show began. What exactly do you think a lot of these creatures eat? Like, do you think that they just omnivores, or they eat anything pretty much? I personally think they would have to be, in order to survive and grow, they'd have to be able to eat anything, plant life, small fish, because some scientists have done studies to show that the lakes that supposedly have lake monsters don't have enough fish in them for them to survive. The only other thing would be for them to travel to another lake or to the ocean to eat and then come back up to breed or whatever they do in those lakes. So it's hard to say until we get just like with Bigfoot, until we get an actual specimen to study, we won't know. We can guess. We get anecdotal evidence in all these cases. I know the ones I've read about, particularly the ocean monsters off of British Columbia, they eat ducks and seagulls. They've been seen in some of the lakes in Canada. These giant eels have come up and snapped a duck under.
Didn't you bring something up about that not too long ago, Nick, when we were talking about one of our monster shows? You were talking about the feeding habits of large predators?
Yeah. We were talking about a large predator obviously needs a large population to feed off of, like Jim just said, and we were talking about Sasquatch, I think, and what type of diet it would need in order to survive. And a lake monster, just like Sasquatch, actually a lake monster is even bigger than Sasquatch, most likely. So, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it sound like you had a question for Jim.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask him if he knew about Caddy, the serpentine monster in Cadborough Bay.
That's the one I was speaking about, the ocean monster, Cataboros, in Caddy Bay, at the south end of Vancouver Island, just right outside this provincial capital of Victoria. It's been seen a number of times there, and a number of other creatures have been seen. They've even apparently caught a couple of young sea monsters, but threw them back in or whatever because they didn't realize what they were at the time until they saw some information on it. That area around there is like, I don't know if you've ever been there. I lived 15 years up there, and it is so huge up there through deep ocean inlets like Norway and hundreds and thousands of islands scattered around. There's stuff could hide up there in those places and we would never see it, even though there's a lot of people living there. There's so many secluded areas. And like British Columbia and Canada, there's millions of lakes that are interconnected, and there's places up there where nobody's actually been. And I know in British Columbia. You were mentioning Sasquatch there too. I've been interested in that. I lived in Vancouver for 15 years, and I used to get out to the east to a place called Harrison Lake. There's a Chehalis Indian Reserve there. And I spoke to a number of natives and local residents who live there who have claimed to have seen the Sasquatch, Canadian Sasquatch. And according to some tribal legends, these Sasquatches are just simply large, hairy humans that were driven up in the mountains when the present natives' ancestors came into the area 10,000 years ago. Now, there's huge caves up in there that people have not even found yet. Apparently, there's legends about hidden valleys. There's even just 30 miles east of the city of Vancouver, 2 million people. There's supposed to be the Pitt Lake Tropical Valley, where there's supposed to be a large alligator type creatures in the lake there, but nobody's found them yet. Only a couple of prospectors say they saw it. So the possibilities are, still there. We think we know so much about the Earth, but we know very little.
Exactly. Are you aware of the Turtle Creek or Turtle Lake monster in Canada?
Yes, I am. I think that's in my book there, if I remember correctly. Turtle Lake.
Yeah. Right now we're being asked if do you know of any sightings or anything in that area?
I'm just sort of checking here. In my book, I have it handy. I know.
Or another great question.
Yes. Yeah, Turtle
Well, I
Lake
was going to say. You could go ahead.
Yeah, Turtle Lake is in Saskatchewan, and it's been known to. You talked about attacking humans. The Turtle Lake monster has been known to rip fishermen's fins, nets apart, and it's supposed to have a dorsal fin like a shark. Some say it's sleek like an otter. Now, there is another possibility there. I've heard reports of giant otters in lakes, too, and how would an otter or a giant otter get into a lake, freshwater lake, 1,000 miles from the ocean? But there are ways they can find their way.
Are you familiar with the story of the Megalodon and how people saw sightings of that?
Megalodon? Is that
the giant shark?
The giant shark? Yeah, out in the ocean, there's been reports of huge sharks. Like everybody thinks of the great white, which is a huge shark, is only down in warm waters. They have sighted huge white sharks off the coast of British Columbia. So the possibility that a shark could grow to a huge size it's always possible. I'm not that familiar with that type of sighting yet, though I've been collecting research on it for a few years.
Yes, Nick. Did you have another question? Sorry, I was talking a lot. I didn't know if you had a question.
Oh, no. I'm just been listening, that's all.
Oh. Well, I have a couple of questions that I've written down here.
Good.
What dinosaurs that lived a long time ago, or dinosaur-like creatures, do most of these creatures resemble?
The ones in the water, the lake and river monsters, it's hard to say. The ones that they have long bodies and they have fins and they have a crest along the back. I forget the exact name on right offhand here. My memory's good, but it's short. Right.
Yeah, because I know a lot of typical sightings have, they say it's like a plesiosaur type creature also.
That's the name, yeah, plesiosaurus. I've seen that mentioned quite a few times. I have not seen one myself. I'm not quite sure what they look like. I can only rely on the reports I've collected from various sources.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah, because I just know, like they say, I believe they said Champ is also believed to be like a plesiosaur, if I don't remember right.
Yes, it's been seen like have a long neck and head that's bent, and with a humpback, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's pretty neat. I didn't know you were into Sasquatch a lot, because our team's personally been on like a couple of Sasquatch expeditions.
Mm-hmm. I'm into anything. I'm into anything unusual that science can't explain. The one I've been sort of investigating too, in addition to all the others, is the theory that a number of UFOs are actually sky critters in another state of matter, and that when they start to die, we are able to see. We can't normally see them, and that and the stories go back, particularly in England, about when a star fell. If you went to where you saw the star fell, you would find this massive disintegrating jelly, which is supposed to be the sky creature disintegrating.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been interested in a lot of unusual things. Like I said, I grew up in a haunted house, and I've never known an unfriendly ghost, though people say they've been scared to death by them. But in my work over the years, I've had occasion to experience some unknown phenomena that are unexplainable phenomena, including, like I said, that undulating telephone pole in Lake Okanagan, and see creatures that are extremely outsized and normal, like the 16-plus foot water snake in that lake in the in the Rideau Lakes district when I was a young boy canoeing. So it's interesting. It makes an interesting world too, that we still got things that we can't explain, that we search for the answers for.
Well, do you know of? Sorry, I went blank there for a minute. What do these creatures, like, how do you think that these creatures would have adapted over the years if they're ancient dinosaurs?
Well, I'm not a scientist like that, specializing in how these things might survive, but my speculation is that, because, hey, there's areas that we do not know, maybe underground seas for all we know. One of the big legends in British Columbia is that there's a huge underground sea below Vancouver Island, which is a huge island. That island is hundreds of miles long and wide, and that two races of creatures, Sasquatches, who fight each other, live on the shores of this underground sea, almost like that movie Journey to the Center of the Earth. So I know up in British Columbia there's a lot of hot springs. You can go in the winter there and find a hot spring, and plants will be growing. There'll be snow 20 feet deep around the hot spring, but the hot spring itself will be clear snow. So there's all these hidden places that creatures could exist, both on land and down in the ocean. Yeah, what you were talking about, that thing about in Siberia, was it Siberia they were talking about? They saw this creature. Siberia is so huge. Yeah, it's so huge. They have lakes up there that I believe nobody's ever been on it, because it's so huge and desolate and out of easy reach of people. Even if you fly an airplane over, the chance of seeing anything is not very, very good.
Oh, exactly, yeah, because it's just so vast and huge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you know if there's any sound recordings of underwater with sonar or anything like that?
Not that I can recall, but I know there's various groups and agencies, including the Navy, have tried to record the whale sounds, but I don't know if they've come up with any unknown sounds. That'd be something I'd have to research myself to be able to answer better.
Well, another question. Do you know of any recent evidence, like any pictures that came up, or media articles that have come out about sighting flaps or anything like that?
About sighting what?
Sighting flaps, where there's like a whole bunch of sightings in like a general time period?
No, not right offhand. I've been trying to do more research right now on ghosts than I have on lake and river monsters, but I'm sure, like, if you Google it, you'll find it. I use Google a lot myself. Yes.
I was going to say, Jim,
yes.
Have you heard of the lake monster that lives in Lake, I'm probably going to kill this name, Pohenegamuk?
How do you spell that?
Pohenegamook.
Oh,
and the Honig. Honig is the short name.
Yeah, that's down, I believe, in New Brunswick or Quebec. There was a monster there. That's in my book. It's in southeastern Quebec, and I've been near it, but I've never been on the lake. They've talked about a lake monster there for years. They call it Ponik. That's the name of the creature. And that, in my encyclopedia, I believe it's listed there. Let me just take a quick look here to refresh my memory. But it's been cited for years, and I remember reading there was actually a TV show where they went there and they found huge underwater caves that they figured that if the creature did live, it was living in there.
Didn't you watch that one not too long ago, Tim? I know what show you're talking about.
Yes, they described it as having a horse head, a mane along the back of its neck, and a long serpentine body. They're even seen occasionally in winter breaking through the ice and that. Because that part of Quebec, I know, freezes over. The lakes freeze over there. There's a thing like, how do these creatures that live in the lakes that freeze over? They must have some place to go. Because if they're not a fish, they must be a mammal, and they have to have air to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. An odd question that was asked just now. Do you know if there's any sightings of any ghosts? I know how this is going to be sounding kind of strange. I know we were talking to a guest a while back, and they said that there was tales of ghost animals. Do you know if there's any ghosts of maybe these lake monsters? People are asking, do you think it could be some sort of ghost or something?
Well, what I mentioned there about Black River, the one that's only seen during electrical storms, that might be a manifestation of a ghost, because you don't see it during daylight, only during the electrical storms on the Black River, which is just south of the St. Lawrence River in northern New York State.
We have a caller that's calling in to ask you a question, and 210, you're on the air.
This is Boogman. How you doing?
Oh, good, pretty good. You got a question for Jim?
Hey, Boogie, man.
Yeah, we're talking about, I guess, lake things, right, apparently, right? What about the Loch Ness Monster? Isn't that supposed to be like underground, what do you call it? Supposed one theory is they live in caves down there, underwater caves like that, supposedly.
Yes,
what's your take on Loch Ness Monster theory, by the way?
Okay, with regards to Loch Ness, there is a belief that there's underground caves that link to the ocean, that it comes up from the ocean, and so that's the way it's been able to survive. Comes back periodically there. As to the theories, there's many different theories, but I believe that they are left over, or they're gigantic forms of creatures that have survived over the years in various conditions.
I agree with you 100%. Because if you go back, I mean, they have recordings of this thing even to medieval days, right?
Oh, it goes back even before these creatures. Yeah, Loch Ness, it goes way back. The first recording, written record of Loch Ness was, I believe, by a monk who lived on a monastery on the shores of Loch Ness. He reported seeing it. And I don't think he was trying to attract tourists at that time, so I believe it.
No, I don't think so either. No, but that right there, we just stories like that, you know, way back when the day, I guess you should say, that kind of proves legitimacy to it. You know what I mean? Because when you go that far back, you can't, you know.
That's right. The anecdotal evidence that goes back even 1,000 years in some cases. You can't dismiss that out of hand saying, oh, this is just one huge conspiracy. it would be a conspiracy that'd have to have thousands of people over thousands of years secretly carrying on saying, let's fool these people some more. I know there have been hoaxes. There have been lake monsters, UFO hoaxes, and the crop circle hoaxes have been proven. A number of them are hoaxes, but there's also a number of unexplained crop circles. I had one report I got in a book I'm writing called British Columbia Weird, where this guy was out walking in the field with his dog, and he heard a snap. And he looked, and suddenly this circle appeared in the grass near him and widened and did a bit of a pattern, then disappeared. So some crop circles are real and some are hoaxes. So as you're saying, there, thousands of years, we've got anecdotal evidence. You can't dismiss it.
Can't. I mean, you go back toward. I mean, if you go back to all these, there's always. When you go far back, even like vampires, there's always recordings of these things. I mean, way back, you know?
Yes.
Like the Chinese, and when you see that over and over and over, you can't dismiss these things because, like you said, I mean, those people were attracting tourists back then, you know?
Right. Even the Bible describes monsters. Jonah and the whale was a huge whale that he was able to...
I agree, I mean,
so
and by that right there alone, it says right there, there's something up there, there was something definitely there at one time. You know what I mean? That's a very important part of that, I believe.
Right.
Well, Jim, over in Newfoundland, are you familiar with Cressy?
Cressy in Newfoundland?
Yes.
I believe that's in my book here, too, in the Encyclopedia. Just let me check here. There is a... Okay, that's Crescent Lake, Newfoundland. Yeah.
Yes.
Crescent Lake. The Indians call it a pond devil or Woodum Haut or Hautuwidi, I think it's called, swimming demon. And now it's called Cressy, the mother of all eels. Again, that's an eel-type creature. And Newfoundland's completely surrounded by the ocean and has many deep bays and inlets, and all the rivers and lakes are possibly connected in some way with the ocean. So it's quite possible there is a giant eel, not Loch Ness type critter or snake-like critter living there. It has a fish-like head, which is similar to an eel.
Well, because I know we personally haven't read the book yet, but I'm thinking after this radio show, I'm going to probably buy your book, and if it would be okay with you, maybe we could do a follow-up episode. And we.
Yes, the book itself is a series. It's not like a lot of information on each one, but it's there to sort of whet your appetite to maybe read more on it. In the back, I give some information on what books to look for and that sort of thing. And, of course, organizations like yourself go a great distance in helping people find out information on this sort of thing.
Okay. Well, another question regarding the lake monsters. We have somebody right now asking, do you know about Chessy in Maryland? It's Chessy.
Chesapeake Bay. Chessy, the creature that appeared in Chesapeake Bay, and many people saw it. I believe it was in... I don't think I included that as a lake monster because that was more of an ocean monster, or sea monster as they call it, Chesapeake Bay there, because I know it opens up under the ocean. There were prints from the old newspapers showing this huge creature swimming down through Chesapeake Bay right past the big old tall ships there with the sails, and it created quite a stir back then. And I believe there were some more sightings recently of some similar creature being seen in that bay again, and they're speculating that it's come back, or its descendants have started to come back. It may be, like I said, a giant eel that comes up and for some reason it comes home and lays eggs and heads back out in the ocean, and then when it gets bigger it comes back and lays the next one, the eggs hatch, and that sort of trend. But I don't have that one in my book, I believe, because it's going to be in an edition on sea monsters eventually.
I have a question for you. What do you believe, I guess, usually is the most solid, I guess, concrete evidence, okay, to support any of your, I guess, sightings and stuff? Do you believe
we've got a lot of anecdotal evidence. We've got photos of carcasses that have come up onto the beaches. But I think something that does lend credence to the stories of lake and river monsters is two facts. That prehistoric fish that was found off of South Africa many years ago, and they found more. People said it was extinct millions of years ago, yet they pulled it up off the oceans off of South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing would be the stories of giant octopus or squids. They, in the last, I believe, 20, 30 years, they have found huge squids off the coast of Newfoundland. Like I said, over 100 feet across with tentacles. And
you ought to hear more of that on TV too, yeah. The big ones, finding something like that.
Mm-hmm. So those two facts, those two incidents indicate that, yes, there could be huge creatures still living that we don't know about. And we put our blinkers on every day so we don't have to deal with things that are out of the ordinary. A lot of people say, I don't believe in ghosts. But once you get them talking, they always have a story to tell. But they're afraid to talk too much about it, being made look ridiculous. But I've been able to get a lot of people to talk and tell me stories about ghosts all the time.
Well, Jim, we have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
We have about 5 minutes left. And, Jim, I would just like to invite you to give out any websites, the name of your book, where you could buy your book, and any other pertinent information that you would like to just close the show out with.
Yes, I have a website called jamesfosterrobinson.com, and my books right now are for sale. The ones I've been putting up are for sale on Amazon.com through print on demand there. I'm working on ghostly guides to all 50 states. I've already published one on the state of West Virginia, Ghostly Guide to West Virginia, which is doing fairly well. I'm working on Kentucky. I hope to do all 10 provinces of Canada, too, and then maybe places like Ireland. But it's a lot of work. Keeps me from getting myself into trouble. Stay here on the computer and get out looking around and that. There's one thing, West Virginia, we got a lot here, but we don't have lake monsters. The only thing we got is a fish in the Potomac River that changes sex at will. That's the closest to a monster I can think.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I have articles written collected on that they found it changes its sex from male to female at will. They don't know whether it's to the pollution or it's a natural phenomenon.
Wow. We have about a minute left in the show, and I just wanted to thank you for coming on, Jim, and I wanted to thank all of our callers and our listeners. Again, everybody, this is Jim Robinson. His website. If you'd like to say your website or anything else again.
Yeah, jamesfosterrobinson.com. That's my website.
Yeah, and thanks again for going on our show tonight, Jim. Like, we really appreciate it. We'll have to do another one with you soon.
Yes, I
thank you very much.
Yes, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Between what we see and what we think we know and believe, there are worlds. There are things that we cannot understand. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations team is in charge of the field. Bigfoots Pad Paranormal Investigations Investigations Team.